The Nacc podcast, know the corruption, know the truth.
Everyone, many times we see civil servants often using state power in an unlawful manner, whether it be embezzlement, helping their associates, complicity in corruption. These problems are endless for us to see.
Yes, but let's not get tired of listening to these stories or feel discouraged by the corruption and misconduct of government officials. Listen to gain knowledge, see the game, and see how subtle the methods of corruption in this era are.
A famous case that I think is interesting that we will tell you today. I have selected them. It was sensational news that the public could not accept. They probably will not forget the Alpine golf course case, right?
Wow, that's great. I've never forgotten this case.
The story of the story starting with the main character, Mr. Nacc, when he was the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior acting, and the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior considered the appeal and ordered the revocation of the order of the Director General of the Land Department unlawfully, violating the decision of the Council of State. It was an intentional performance of official duties in violation of the Cabinet resolution with the intention of helping Alpine Real Estate Company Limited, Alpine Golf and Sports Club Company Limited, and the subsequent landowners to avoid having their registration of rights revoked and to prevent the land from becoming temple. And according to the order of the Land Department,
It's known that the real owner is Mrs. Nacc, who made able to give 2 plots of land, totaling 924 rai, 2 ngan, and 75 square wall, located in KH Long Wong District, Pathum Thai Province, to Wat Thamikaram Vihan. 2 years later, Mrs. Nacc passed away. Now, there is a lot of commotion. For example, the abbot of Wat Thamikaram Vihan wrote a letter to the Minister of Interior. Permission to acquire the land was requested, but Mr. Sanothin Thong, Deputy Minister of Interior, acting on behalf of the Minister of Interior at that time, ordered not to grant permission, based on Section 84 of the Land Code, which states that the acquisition of land by a temple, a Roman Catholic monastery, a Christian foundation, or an Islamic mosque must be permitted by the minister, and the acquisition must not exceed 50 asa. In cases where it is appropriate, the minister may grant permission to acquire and exceeding the amount specified in the first paragraph. The civil court ordered the Nacc Buddhist University Foundation to be the administrator of Mrs. Niam's estate instead of the previous administrator. Later, the Nacc Buddhist University Foundation, as the new administrator, transferred both plots of land, which were the inheritance of Wat Thamikaram Vihan, to the Nacc Buddhist University Foundation itself. On the same day, the land was immediately registered for sale to Alpine Real Estate Company Limited and Alpine Golf and Sports Club Company Limited. The Department of Religious Affairs, Ministry of Education, also came forward by sending a letter of discussion. The legal issue of inheritance according to the will of Mrs. Nacc went to the Council of State, which the Council of State ruled that the land which was given ownership by will to the temple shall become the property of the temple, which is there according to the will by the operation of the law, and is Sangho and since the death of Mrs. Nacc, the testator. And for the transfer of Sangho An, the executor of the will is entitled to only manage the sale and transfer of the land to the temple, which is there according to the will. It cannot be transferred to any other person not specified in the will.
now they fought back and forth, fighting until their eyes were tired. The Department of Religious Affairs sent a letter to the Department of Lands to consider revoking the said land registration. After the investigation, the Director General of the Department of Lands ordered the revocation of the inheritance transfer registration, the revocation of the land title deed that was divided, and the land sale transfer registration, as well as other registrations, because they were registered legally, and notified the interested parties of the said revocation order. The Nacc Buddhist University Foundation, Alpine Real Estate Company Limited, Alpine Golf and Sports Club Company Limited, and their associates therefore filed an appeal against the order to revoke the said order, but the Director General of the Land Department considered and disagreed with the appeal, so the appeal was dismissed. The interested parties therefore sent the said appeal to the Ministry of Interior 3 times, causing the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior to issue an order appointing a working group to consider and screen the appeal of the order to revoke the registration of rights and legal transactions in the disputed land, with the defendant as the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior as the chairman of the working group. having the authority to consider the appeal according to the law. After that, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Interior resigned from the position, so the defendant became the acting permanent secretary as mentioned above. The gist is here. The defendant used the power and duty as the deputy permanent secretary of the ministry to act in place of the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Interior to revoke the order of the Director General of the Land Department.
When fighting, we have to fight back. How? How do we fight? It's interesting. Because the Council of State, the General Meeting, has sent a letter to the Minister of Interior stating that the defendant's actions will cause continuous and inconclusive legal problems, and it is recommended to proceed in accordance with the opinion of the Council of State, according to the Cabinet resolution that sets the principle for ministries, departments, and agencies to proceed in accordance with the legal opinion of the Council of State. The Minister of Interior has assigned the defendant in his capacity as Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior to consider taking legal action, but the defendant has ignored it and has sent an urgent letter from the Ministry of Interior to the Secretary General of the Council of State stating that the opinion of the Council of State is not binding on the Ministry of Interior and the Department for Lands because it was not the one who discussed and cannot refer to the Cabinet resolution that the 3rd on February 28, 1939 can be applied to this case.
I am tired of hearing this, but I am also encouraged because the Nacc office must come down to take action by itself with the indictment order of the Nacc committee, which considers that the defendant holds the position of Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, acting in place of Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, and holds the position of Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, which is considered an official and a state official with the authority and duty to administer the country and manage all aspects as Permanent Secretary. The defendant committed an offense under the Criminal Code while holding the position. The appeal was considered and an order was given to revoke the order of the Director General of the Land Department, which was unlawful and violated the decision of the Council of State. It was an intentional performance of official duties in violation of the Cabinet resolution with the intention of helping Alpine Real Estate Company Limited, Alpine Golf and Sports Club Company Limited, and the subsequent landowners to avoid having their registration of rights revoked and preventing the land from becoming temple and according to the order of the Land Department. It was an act or omission of duty that was improper to cause damage to the government, Wathamakaram, Warwihan, the Department of Religious Affairs, the Department of Land, and the Ministry of Interior were acting or refraining from acting in a corrupt manner to seek benefits that are not lawfully obtained for oneself or others. Please punish according to the Criminal Code, Section 157. But the defendant denied it. Everyone.
To summarize for easy understanding, from the defendant's behavior in ordering the revocation of the order of the Director General of the Land Department, which is considered an administrative order, it was done by intentionally ignoring the fact that Wathamikaram Warwihan had taken possession and taken advantage of the disputed land by renting it out, including the temple having registered the disputed land as temple land, intentionally interpreting and applying the law in a way that is different from what the Council of State, the General Meeting, had decided and given its opinion on, and intentionally violating and not complying with the Cabinet resolution on February 28, 1939, which required ministries, departments, and agencies to comply with the legal opinions that the Council of State had already given their opinions on.
And as a result of the defendant's order, Alpine Real Estate Company Limited and Alpine Golf and Sports Club Company Limited benefited without having to revoke the registration of rights and legal acts and without having to be liable to the transferees who will be revoked according to the administrative order of the Director General of the Land Department, which is considered an act to seek benefits that should not be obtained legally for others.
That's great, because in summary, the verdict is that the defendant is guilty under Section 157 of the Criminal Code and sentenced to 2 years in prison.
This is it. If you do wrong, you must accept responsibility. Two of us always emphasize that if you think of committing corruption, karma will catch up with you. You don't have to wait until the next life. Honest, fair, professional, transparent, and verifiable National Anti-Corruption Commission.
The Nacc podcast, Know the Corruption, Know the Truth.